and we're going to wait for a couple more to join. And I was trying to find a snappy way to say, "Are you hungry, Victor?" Or more importantly, Vladimir, because Viktor Orban is thirsty in the way that J.D. Vance and Marco Rubio and Pastor Pete are. But Vladimir Putin is hungry. And we're approaching on the 12th of April, the elections in Hungary. And there was just this past Monday, there was a meeting of like-minded far-right candidates from around Europe and a few visitors from other parts of the world. And they were coming to support Viktor Orban. Is that because Viktor Orban is really, really popular? Or, as I would argue, is that because Vladimir Putin told them to go? The headliner for the event was Marine Le Pen from France, and as we know, Marine she's waiting for some important news from the courts to see whether she'll ever be able to, well, not ever, whether she'll be able to participate in the elections in next year in 2027. She has her able-bodied second ready to go, and they're going to do Rally's going to do wonderfully in France. It's just a matter of to what degree. Now, very recently, they were also supposed to do well in France's second city, in Marseille. They were expected to do quite well, and they didn't, which was encouraging. That's one for the good guys and girls. But yeah, so Victor had this event on Monday, which was in Hungary, called the first patriotic. I didn't write it down, but it was an assembly of right-wing folks, much like the group that Trump assembled at his Doral golf club a couple weekends ago. And he called in all of the right-wing leaders from Central and South America and excluded the more progressive, like Lula da Silva from Brazil. Why you would want to rule out one of the largest economies in your hemisphere if you're supposed to be focusing on your hemisphere? Probably short-sighted, but it was marketed. That was marketed as sort of a security conference plus economic issues. But really, what it was, because it was Donald J. Trump, it's about fealty to Donald J. Trump, and they showed up and they fluffed him. Everybody did. They went around the room and they took turns. Like the cabinet meeting that may still be going on, I was just watching, and they took turns telling Donald Trump what a fucking genius he is. And it went, it went J.D. Vance, and then it went to Marco, and then it went to Steve Witkoff, the man in the cabinet that's mentioned in the Epstein files as much as anyone not named Donald J. Trump. Yeah, and so they went around, and Pastor Pete talked about various things, religious and otherwise, and how he is. He loves that quote about war is diplomacy by other means. Right? And for somebody like the simple mind of Pastor Pete, that just energizes him, which is troubling. but he's a troubling guy. He's a troubled soul. But this little conclave last Friday, you could say that it was sponsored by Vladimir Putin in many ways, because he is propping up Orban financially. He is, he's a principal. Um, He's an unindicted co-conspirator in the suit that Ms. Le Pen is going through in France, the one that's trying to disqualify her from elections for at least another 4 or 5 years, because it was Putin's money in French politics that caused her to be indicted and prosecuted. Putin is doing the exact same thing with AfD in Germany. They're now under investigation. They're always under investigation because they are essentially Germany's most popular version of the Nazi Party. So they are the German organizing structure and constitution allows them, the state intelligence agencies, to investigate and wiretap and make sure that they don't have Nazis. Now we could really benefit from that here, because one man that hasn't visited, Marco Rubio, went to visit Viktor Orban after the Munich Security Conference last month. And, he went to the Munich Security Conference. Everybody was like, oh, Marco's so great. I'm glad that he came. He's so much more chill than JD was last year, because JD scared us a little bit, praising Nazis and advocating for Nazi-free speech rights. But, he's a former senator. He's not a Nazi. So we're good, right? No, we're not good. And what Marco did as soon as he was done in Munich is he turned around and he went to see Victor in Hungary, and made some public statements about how much the President of the United States, your boy Donald J. Trump, supports Viktor Orban, and how he thinks how Mario professed his undying loyalty to Trump, and the U.S. would offer cooperation, wink, wink, nod, nod, to Hungary in a way that would benefit all of the Hungarian people, and so they should support Viktor. The coup de grace, as it will become be known maybe, on this fluffing exercise in front of the election. Putin's not going to show up, because that would be un-KGB like. But J.D. Vance, it isn't officially scheduled yet, but there's a note running around the State Department that says that Vance, with the elections on the 12th of April, that Vance will show up in Hungary and spend a little time eating some goulash and other things on the 7th and or 8th, right before the election. So, and if you step back and you think about it, Donald Trump isn't hanging out in Budapest with an Orban shirt on. Putin would like him to, but that might be unseemly even by Donald J. Trump's very low standards. But to have our vice president, putting his thumb on the scales of a European election within 1 week of the election itself, it would have been considered unseemly before. Now it's dangerous. It's dangerous because of the way that things are trending in Europe more generally. Now there was a very recent victory too with Giorgia Meloni, the head of Italy. One of her far right homeboy, it was a member of the visitors on a member of the party on this past Monday. So Italy was well represented from the far right, as was Slovakia, a far right candidate from Portugal, from 11 other countries. Uh, even the in the Netherlands, where we had a victory last month, there each of the countries sent their best, furthest to the right candidate to support Victor, because again, Vladimir Putin has his hands deep in the pockets of every single European EU member state because he wants to maintain control. Viktor Orban, the polls showing Mr. Magyar, who is Viktor Orban's opponent, have alternatively shown him, that's Peter Magyar, for those that are counting, who was a former associate of Orban, left because of a corruption scandal, objecting to corruption within the government, not himself. Although you will hear things about Magyar that you've never heard before as we get closer to the election, because, as we discussed before, Vladimir Putin has a team of trained GRU heavies in Budapest, not from the outside. They're in country, setting up influence campaigns, social media, on the streets, event, everything you could imagine. Every dirty little wonderful trick that you could imagine, it's going to happen between now and election day. And it's very worrying because what once seemed like close to a 15-point lead, it's just, polling sucks in our country. It's worse there. I mean, reliability wise. So there was always reason to be skeptical of a number that was approaching 15%, and the average of the reliable polls now say that the opposition, that Peter is still up by 10 points. But think about, with the full force of Vladimir Putin, his espionage operation on the ground in Hungary, J.D. Vance, the American vice president, showing up and saying, we're going to send stimmy checks to each of you hungry Hungarians. He won't say that, but he may suggest something very similar. There are countervailing powers, including George Soros, who, as you know, is a Hungarian Jew, and he is a powerful man with a lot of money and a lot of influence. But Viktor Orban has done everything he can to kneecap Mr. Soros's power in Hungary, including closing down the institution of higher learning that Mr. Soros sponsored, and about 25 other things. Mr. Orban has control of the media. He has done the same sort of thing. He took the Vladimir Putin playbook and he played it a little slower. He slow rolled Vladimir Putin's playbook in Hungary to tremendous success, which means that prediction markets right now are a little bit, they're sort of opposition 60%. I'm not at all buying it. Sounds like there's a fire truck, so that would be fun. I hope they leave the sirens off, unless, of course, my place is burning down. Yeah. I think that it's going to be right down to the wire, and there are also games, of course, that you can play with the prediction markets. Think about it from there are different schools of thought. Do you want to show there's, what do we want to call it? I was going to make another fire truck reference, but you can have, by influencing the prediction markets, you can indicate that your preferred candidate is suffering in the polls. Can you generate more interest in voter turnout because, hey, your guy needs you, so make sure to turn out? Or there's what I guess we'll call the bandwagon side of the argument. Like, hey, these are the cool kids. Victor, Vladimir, and everybody else, they're on team Trump. Trump will send us lots of money. They're on team JD Vance. They're on team Giorgia Meloni. Ms. Meloni, the leader of Italy, she's in a strong position. She's popular because she's thought of as the most sensible of the European far right candidates. She's not. People are legitimately frightened in France and in Germany, but in Italy they seem to they kind of like their Merloni. It's their country, that's their choice. And then there are the smaller the smaller states that Melania's home country, Slovenia, just it narrowed very quickly. Slovakia is right. Austria is way to the right. They are that is Austria is Hitler's happy place. That is extreme right in office, not aspiring. And Sweden, they had the far right did very well there too. Apologize for the background noise. One of the downsides of being outside is that you get invited to construction activity. I guess something's going on down the street. God bless. I can't cancel it. It's their lunch too. If they are hungry like you are, they're hungry like I am. They're hungry like my dear four-legged friend is. But this, as I talked about before, this particular election is very important to United States voters because it's going to show you, like Project 2025 showed you and warned you against voting for Donald J. Trump. Some of us listened, and some people didn't want to know. They didn't trust the truth, obviously. Here we are. It'll be interesting to see how, like I talked about, I'm going to be tracking the prediction markets as we get, within 1 week of the, because the 60% figure on the opposition right now it's just not enough data, and the amount of liquidity in the pools is not a lot. So you don't, low liquidity or moderate liquidity, people can, breaking news, lower liquidity in the pools, easier to manipulate. Right? If you have $100 in the pool and somebody comes in and bets $100, then that's 50. That's doubling up the pool size, and you can swing just if you average 1 in 10, right? But if you hit 10, 20 times, yeah. That's I just did that like Fred Flintstone, I think. But you get the idea. Getting close to the election, when there's more market manipulation, more money in the pools, and you can sort of track it over time, then we'll be looking at that. As I mentioned, here in the beautiful Commonwealth of Massachusetts, Kalshi is out, and Poly Market is under pressure. So I'm just getting the data from another jurisdiction legally, as far as they know, and just using that data to help me as the narrative evolves. So, what can we learn this far? So this is 12. We're about we're still 2.5 weeks out for the election. Obviously, very interested to see what JD Vance says when he arrives and speaks there on the ground. What will Vladimir Putin's statement be ahead of the election? Nothing. He pays people to do these things, and his influence. He knows that there are enough people inside Hungary that are repulsed by some of his actions in Ukraine and otherwise, that there isn't a big groundswell of support for Vladimir Putin anywhere, but he has a lot of influence. It's two different sides of the coin. He if he can marshal literally hundreds of millions of dollars to influence elections, he's going to win a few. He lost. I mean, he lost 2020 here in the United States narrowly, but that didn't go his way. Did he cry? Did he grieve? Did he start blaming people? Maybe secretly. He thought that his candidate wasn't that great, but that's what he is. That's who he's got to work with, and he's gonna ride out with DJT, as he's going to ride out with Viktor Orban, because as we've talked about before, that the ability to have that man, Viktor, who is a member of NATO and the EU, who is favorably disposed to do whatever Vladimir Putin tells him, that has significance. He also gets tremendous intelligence from Viktor Orban. I was digging down into the EU foundational documents, trying to figure, there is ongoing. The EU itself baby sanctioned Hungary because of anti-democratic behavior, judiciary. Right? That was, if you didn't catch it, the referendum that Merloni lost just recently in Italy, about 55%. Yeah, she was hoping to reform the judiciary. Sound familiar? Same game plan. It's Vladimir Putin. It's what Orban achieved in Hungary already some time ago, which is stripping power away from the judiciary, so he can control the parliament and influence the country more generally. So he has a tame NATO EU member. And I was trying to look at the rules and see if, for instance, the other members of the EU decided that they wanted to kick Viktor to the curb. It's complicated because you want to love your brothers and sisters, the people, the civilians, the electorate in Hungary, because you're connected. You're a hiker in the Carpathian Mountains. You love its beautiful country. You're used to you take family trips, and the Carpathians, which Romania, Hungary, Czechia or Slovakia, we'll say Czechia, Carpathian, beautiful, right? What's nestled in? Oh, what's in Romania? This is more fun. Transylvania, vampires, Hunger Games, Hungary, connection? No, fun? You decide. But if you're, it's a beautiful part of the world. Hungary is a beautiful country. Their seat of government is, I think, the largest parliament in Europe, maybe pretty close. Unfortunately, it has a lot of gold, so maybe DJT is going to go to visit soon to get some pictures if he hasn't been before. It's a magnificent country. It is. What else? Budapest is cut into two pieces by the Danube, much as Istanbul doesn't separate two continents. But it's an interesting talking point and very popular on the tourist boats. Right? It's magnificent. So if you happen to be in the neighborhood, and before Vladimir Putin takes over all of Hungary and all of Western Europe, then stop in. It's a marvelous history, complicated as many of the countries through the Second World War, because of there was not a huge Jewish population and not a huge Roma population, but substantial. I mean, a substantial amount of people, not the largest. The largest Roma population in Europe, I guess, is Romania, Russia, Poland, Hungary in there somewhere, and the Roma people were treated with the same cruelty, much the same cruelty as the Jews were in Europe by the Nazi Party, and they were people that were persecuted over very long periods of time. In Russia, they weren't not as much by their own government, but as you may have learned in history classes, which they used to have, at least in schools in this country, that when the Nazis were fighting with Russia and on Russian soil, they were particularly cruel to Russian Jews and Russian Roma population, and to the same end as in Germany. So, not dark times, but a magnificently beautiful country with great people, a unique language. You know, Peter Magyar, right, is the candidate that's facing Viktor Orban. I think we maybe talked about this in an earlier episode, but the language, Magyar is a word that means Hungarian. It's a language. It's also a guy named Peter's last name. And so it's like Peter English or whatever, Peter England. He is, we're going to hope that Peter has a good day or a good few weeks, but we're going to be sober about the fact that with all of the forces arrayed against him, Peter, again, how much is he getting quietly from the Soros types and others in the EU? They would be well served to support Peter. Now, other countries are reticent to put their thumb on the scale of elections because that's just something in the old days that you didn't do. And more than one thumb on the scale with Viktor Orban is Vladimir Putin, J.D. Vance, Donald J. Trump, who didn't go, but he sent a letter of support for Orban. And so Orban can look up and say, Italy loves me, France loves me, Germany loves me. Don't want to talk about Putin. 1, 2, 3, 4. Why don't you love me too? Vote for me. I'll be, the strikes against Orban are, as I just mentioned, he has done what Netanyahu has done to the judiciary in Israel, what Merloni is trying to do to the judiciary in Italy. Orban has he's already done the dirty work there. But can the opposition point to that and say, is this the kind of country you want to live in? Right? Rule of law, and for the first time in our history, I will argue, they can point at the United States and say, MAGA, and they're kneecapping their court system so they can become an authoritarian government. Let's take Hungary back. They're sending their vice president over. You're Hungarian. This is your country. Your vote counts. Say no. Say fuck no to J.D. Vance and Donald J. Trump. Send a message. Vote against, vote for Magyar and the candidates in his party parliamentary elections. We need you, or you're going to become. They know they don't have to be able to do complicated tea leaf reading to see what's going on with the AfD in Germany, to see what's going on with Rally in France, Nigel Farage in England. You don't have to be a genius. You don't have to look far to see examples of how the experiment is going poorly right now. Yeah. So on the fun side of Hungary, I think it's about time for lunch, and just wanted to hit on that. I'm going to be, as I mentioned before, as the prediction markets mature, getting closer to the election, I'm going to be tracking that, and I'll have at least one more podcast as we run up to the election, because we're going to be able to see. It's like seeing into the future. Influence of radical right party members, J.D. Vance and otherwise. Influence of Vladimir Putin on the election, just like in the United States, just like in country A, B, C, D, and E. In Italy. Influence of the money. And how ironic is it that we have, because if there's one person that the MAGA right complained about over the past number of years, it's Soros. Soros is the devil. He is the radical left. Soros is a major sponsor of Antifa. He's not, but it made a good MAGA talking point. So, yeah, we'll leave it at that. Hope you have a good lunch, that you're hungry, and that you are satisfied with what comes after that. I will. I had a terrible fail yesterday because I have to figure out a better way. If I like being outside, but I can't see the screen, so I'm shutting off the camera blind, as it were, just by knowing where the button is on the screen. But I ain't that bright, so I kind of muddled it yesterday. So apologies if I other than looking at me, if I in some other way I ruined your viewing experience, my deepest apologies. I will try to get not really uncomfortably close to the screen, but no promises. Shut it off, and we'll reconvene sometime tomorrow. This I tried to do as I've confessed before. I tend to just go live and do my pod, and people will watch it when they care to, because people have busy schedules. I know that sometimes people take lunch and maybe they want to, hate watch or whatever, or do something like that. So I'm going to try, if it's at a reasonable time, try to do the scheduling thing with, title, schedule, like an adult male or human, more frequently, and that way people can catch it when they care to, and be reminded or forewarned of an impending podcast. So thank you again. I'm going to lean in and know that I'm in the right zone and see what I can do.